Have you ever wondered what triggered the sudden rush for Africa in the late 19th century? This is the unanswered question that has intrigued historians for generations. The end of the 19th century saw an unexpected scramble for Africa, as European powers suddenly turned their gaze towards the vast and diverse continent. Beneath the surface of this great rush lies a complex web of factors and events. Today, we'll unravel the events that unfolded during the Scramble for Africa. The Scramble for Africa began in earnest in 1881. As the 19th century was drawing to a close, major European powers turned their gaze towards the vast, mysterious, and resource-rich continent of Africa. Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, and Italy all vied for a piece of the African pie, their interests fueled by a potent mix of economic, political, and strategic motives. Among the key figures in this scramble was Belgium's King Leopold II. His acquisition of the Congo under the guise of humanitarian and philanthropic endeavors ignited the European race for African territories. Leopold's rule over the Congo was not only personal, but also brutal, revealing the darker side of this scramble. This sudden land grab by European powers marked the start of an intense period of territorial disputes and conflicts in Africa. The scramble had begun, and it would reshape the continent, leaving a legacy that continues to impact the lives of millions to this day. The territorial disputes inevitably led to the Berlin Conference in 1884 to 85. This diplomatic powwow, convened by Otto von Bismarck, the Chancellor of Germany, was essentially a boardroom meeting for European powers, with Africa as the board game. The objective: to lay down some ground rules for the annexation of African territory and avoid potential conflict amongst themselves. The conference essentially formalized the Scramble for Africa. It set out protocols for future annexations. Any claim to African land had to be backed by effective occupation. In simpler terms, to own it, you had to control it. This accelerated the pace of colonization as European powers rushed to stake their claims. Post-conference, the scramble intensified. Within a span of 30 years from the close of the conference in 1885 to the outbreak of World War I in 1914, Africa was turned inside out. The once vast and diverse continent was partitioned into arbitrary boundaries, divvied up like a pie amongst the European powers. By 1914, a staggering 90% of Africa was under European control. What's more, the indigenous peoples of Africa were largely excluded from these decisions. Their lands, their resources, their futures were determined by distant powers, with little regard for the cultural, linguistic, or tribal affiliations that crisscrossed the continent. The Berlin Conference essentially sealed Africa's fate, turning it into a patchwork of European colonies. The Scramble for Africa left an indelible mark on the continent's history and its people. The effects were far-reaching and profound. Traditional African societies were disrupted, often violently, as European powers imposed their own systems of government, economics, and culture. The establishment of colonial borders, drawn with little regard for the complex tapestry of ethnic and linguistic communities, has sowed seeds of conflict that continue to germinate today. Moreover, the extraction of Africa's wealth during this period left the continent in a state of socio-economic fragility, from which it is still recovering. The political systems imposed by the colonial powers also left a legacy of authoritarianism and instability in many African nations. The Scramble for Africa, a relatively short period in history, shaped the African continent's trajectory in ways that continue to resonate today. This era stands as a stark reminder of the enduring impact of colonialism on the world's most diverse continent.